Good evening. Right, hello everybody who's going to be joining us. I'm on. This is my. Sorry, I can't get my words out this evening. This is my Reconnect series, which is live on a Thursday evening at 7:30, currently British summertime in the UK. I won't start just yet because I know there's going to be a few people logging on. So while people get logged on, I'll just do a little preamble, if you like. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Faye and I'm an equine geomancer, which is something that not many people are familiar with. My role, my wonderful work, is to reconnect horses, humans and land for incredible success. I work with the subtle energies in the landscape and the more than human realms of consciousness in nature to create spaces that serve and support my clients' goals. And there tend to be equine performance businesses, and the owners are looking to create optimum states, if you like, for peak performance and success. And it's not something that many people are familiar with, but I can tell you now that there's a lot of science and philosophy actually written about the more than human realms of consciousness and how important it is for us to, I haven't quite got the lighting, I've got a shadow, how important it is for us as individuals to connect with that. And it is a state of connection that animals and nature exists in as a matter of course. It's us as humans that have learnt to shut a lot of that connection out, unfortunately. But that's a false philosophy, if you like, because actually we can't separate ourselves from nature. As human beings, we are part of nature. We are part of the universe, which is nature. The whole, it's not just greenery and plants that are nature, it is everything. So as I say, I came online tonight to talk a little bit about your trauma and how your individual trauma affects your horse when you're working with it. So, sorry, I've just realised I haven't taken the other phone off. Taking the other phone off, it's about to go beep at me. So yeah, so if you've got any comments, do please put them in the chat box, because as I say, I always answer them as we go. If anybody's watching live, if you're watching live, put hashtag live. If you're watching on replay, hashtag replay would be really useful. Now, although I'm relating this to how your trauma affects your horse, of course, your trauma also affects your own energies. And I've spoken a little bit in some of my other videos about the human energy field. And it contains, for someone like me who can see energies, an awful lot of information. And I've come to realise over the years that your horses, I'm convinced that horses can also see these subtle energies that I see. I think a lot of animals can see it and live in that way. So I've come on to talk a little bit about your energy field, your trauma, and how that impacts upon your horse. Now, we all know that animals are incredibly forgiving of all our foibles. You know, our dogs love us no matter what and dote on us. Our cats love us and dote on us in a slightly different way, as they say, because, you know, dogs have owners and cats have slaves. And horses, likewise, are incredibly forgiving of the trauma that we have in our energy field. But let's just go back for a minute, because a lot of people often mistakenly believe that they don't have trauma in their energy field. Now, recent psychological studies have shown that a vast majority of people, not the vast, a high percentage of people are suffering from some form of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not something that only, you know, those in severe situations experience. It's something that a lot of us have from various instances throughout our life. And that trauma is available for those of us who can see energies, like myself, like horses, like animals. It is very prevalent and very visible within your energy field. Now, it's really important for us as human beings to deal with that trauma, but equally it's important for those that we come into contact with to deal with our trauma. And when we're working particularly closely with animals in a one-to-one relationship like horses, we carry that trauma around with us all the time. Now, as I say, animals are very, very forgiving. But it's much easier for them to help you, if you like, if you acknowledge the trauma. The difficulty really comes for animals when people are totally blind to their own problems and won't face them. Thank you, Max. Oh, hi, Max. Yeah, they are very conscious and very forgiving, and when we work together, if we acknowledge our problems, then they are much easier able to sit with us in that quiet place, if you like, when we spend time with them, that allows us to remove that trauma. It's a wonderful reciprocal relationship then. They have the ability to still us inside with their quiet confidence that kind of balances out our frequencies. So that if you are, which is why people are drawn to animals when they are stressed, which is why when people are feeling difficult, walking the dog, stroking the cat, spending time with your horse is incredibly important. Two of those things, particularly walking the dog and spending time with the horse, are do the fundamental thing that psychological studies say is good for us, which is getting out in nature. When we walk the dog, when we ride the horse, we are out in nature. We are out in the wide open skies. We are out in greenery. And that in itself helps us to recover. And one of the recommended things for recovery from depression now is getting outside in woods. So spending time with, horses and dogs, etc., inevitably puts us in those spaces that help us. But as I say, through life we carry this trauma. For someone who can see energies like myself, it's very prevalent in certain areas of our body, which most people are familiar with to some degree with the aura and the chakra system. But there are many forms of energy that surround our body, and our trauma is within them. Now, the thing is with animals, when we come into particularly close physical proximity, for instance, riding a horse, your energy bodies read each other, if you like. Horses are far better at that than humans. Humans are very good at reading horses. If a really good equine person, obviously, is really good at reading horse body language, equusology. But I don't work in that way. I'm not here to help equine owners, trainers, riders train their horse. What the different side step in is that I step in when all the training should be working, but it isn't. And yet there's absolutely no reason why it should be working. Now, the problem is often something to do with not necessarily the horse. In many cases, it's actually to do with the rider. And it's often something that they haven't dealt with deep within themselves. That the horse, it doesn't sit well with that horse. The horse can feel it. It can feel fear, anger, resentment, whatever the emotion is. Because most of us walk round with some form of fear, sense of inadequacy, we're not good enough, whatever. And we hold that in. And to be truly at one with animals, particularly horses, it's about finding that fear and stepping through it. So really good horse partners and riders trust each other to such a degree. You can't go eventing. You're not going to do show jumping. You're not going to do the really hard performance sports unless you absolutely trust that horse, and fundamentally it has to trust you. The problem is that sometimes the trust from each other is not there because the horse can sense that this person has things, and this person, their fear might trip in right at the wrong moment. And a lot of us walk around with a lot of fear. We fear we're not good enough. We fear we can't do things. We fear it all comes from wherever it comes from, childhood, upbringing, whatever traumatic experience life has thrown at us. And let's face it, it can throw many at us. But if this trauma is sat unacknowledged in your energy fields, that's when horses really have a problem. If you acknowledge it and say, I've got these problems, this is wrong, then that is, for them, a huge step in the right direction. It's 99% of clearing that when they're with you and they can assist you in clearing that energy, is acknowledging that you have the problem. But the problem is there are people who don't believe there's absolutely anything wrong with them whatsoever, and why won't the bloody horse do this? Why won't it do that? And they're acting they're coming from a stance of dominance because of their own insecurity. Now, obviously, with training in horses, there is a lot of theories about dominance, and a lot of horsemanship is based on the theory of dominance, that the horse is kicking off, being unresponsive, because it's challenging you as the dominant person in the herd, which actually recent research shows that no horses ever think of humans as part of the herd. They do not figure in their frame of reference as a part of the herd. The dominance within horses is only within other horses. Normally when a horse is not doing what the owner or rider thinks it should be doing, is that the human has missed something fundamental. The horse is in pain, it's got a bad back, it doesn't want to do, it's scared or whatever. So I have seen people persist in the dominance and push their horse to do things that has been a great physical or emotional detriment to that horse because of this dominance theory. And then working with that owner through that, they felt such a need to be dominant because of their own insecurity. It was a mirror of their own insecurity. So they had so much internal problems that the only control that they felt they had in their life was to control this animal. And that is very damaging. And that's one of the ways that trauma reflects within our relationship with animals. It's just that people try to control and try to dominate, and that obviously really sours your relationship with your horses, because horses do not learn. They learn through support and encouragement, the same as we all do. If you stand in a classroom full of children and shout at them till they're petrified, the adrenaline kicks in so much they don't remember and they don't learn, and then you call them stupid. This dominant teacher will call them stupid because you haven't picked up anything that I've said. And the same thing goes with horses. If you're trying to teach them through dominance, through fear, through just battling on, they're not going to learn that. And any good equestrian person will tell you that. They learn through love, nurturing and support, the same as we do. Just because they don't speak English doesn't mean they're not conscious and sentient. All of nature, according to quantum physics, is conscious and sentient. And when we work with those, I spoke a little bit about at the beginning about those more than human realms of consciousness, the power within nature to manifest reality happens all around us, doesn't it? Plants grow, trees grow, things born, live and die all the time. That is the power of manifestation. So when I'm working on a geomantic level with horse owners, riders, trainers, equestrian businesses, etc., it is about harnessing that power, aligning yourself, your business aims, your properties with all those things to achieve, to manifest the reality that you want. And that might be more success in business, more success in sport, more success with your horses, better breeding programs, whatever. But it's about aligning your purpose with the power that is within nature around you. And you can't do that effectively if you are crippled by your own trauma. It's just not possible, because you have a very blinkered mindset, blinkers like horses, you have a very blinkered mindset, and you're often coming from a place, as I say, of fear or scarcity or whatever it may be, so that you fail to see the power that you have to impact and relate to these levels of consciousness. So trauma affects us on many, many levels. Sorry, I was looking at my watch only because I promised myself I wouldn't waffle for hours and hours and hours tonight, that I would, sorry, dust on the screen, that I would say something concise and hopefully meaningful, people. And if you have questions, do put them on, do answer them. If I don't answer them tonight, because you're watching on replay, post them anyway and I will answer them. And if you post them live, that's great, we'll get around to them. But yeah, some of these things I'm aware that are concepts that some people won't see as, or they can be new concepts, or they're concepts that they find it hard to relate to things like, well, how does that work with horse racing? How does that work with eventing? How does that work with show jumping? It's about working with the people and the place to make the best that they can be, and remove negative influences as a geomant. So it'll be influences in the environment, it'll be influences in the ground, it'll be trauma in place, and it will be trauma in people. and it's about being very clear what you want to achieve. As I said, fundamentally, one of the first things that we have to start with is removing trauma in people and removing trauma in place. So it's quite, these are all things that affect, as I say, that affect animals. When there's trauma in the landscape, for instance, they tend to be places that animals aren't particularly happy with. And coming from an agricultural background, I know very well that, having lived for a while in Ireland, there were certain places, for instance, the cattle really didn't like to go, and they tended to be villages that were deserted during the famine and things like that. There's an element of trauma in the landscape, and animals did not like it. So if there's trauma in people, they don't like it. We've all seen animals, haven't we? We've loved somebody and you can tell they're a great person, and then you can see that somebody is absolutely riddled with trauma. That, you know, horses particularly don't like people who are so damaged that they can't relate to them. So, for instance, they have difficulty being around people who are alcoholic and stuff like that. So you'll see they act defensively more around certain people that they perceive could be a danger to them and a danger to their herd, if you like, because this person is not somebody that they see as sitting at ease within themselves. So that's really how trauma can really negatively impact your relationship with your horses. And as I say, if you don't recognise it, it can be really, really difficult for the horse. So you have to be brave, and those people working with me know they have to be brave, and together we face things and I help them work through it, or I point them in the direction of people that can help them work through it for the betterment of their relationship, for the betterment of themselves. We carry so much within our lives that we pick up on right from the minute we're conceived, and if you're into past lives, all sorts of things we allegedly carry with us. So there's so much in life that we need to learn, and most of it is about learning to be really truly ourselves and absolutely fearless in who we are, and not worrying about what other people think. It is about shining our light, and that, when you get into that state, then horses will educate you spiritually on a whole new level that when I started working with them, I didn't think was possible, because I came into working by horses almost by default. I originally had been a geomancer for many years, working in houses or buildings. What's the word I'm looking for? Office buildings and places like that, commercial buildings, agricultural places, farms, etc. And I actually came into working with horses by default. So my journey with them was one of self-discovery for me as well. So and they helped me get through many difficult situations, actually. So as I say, trauma can really negatively impact your ability to work with horses. So I'm aware, like I said, there's not too many questions this evening. So if you have any or think of any afterwards, because although I've related to horses, as I say, it relates to any animals. It also relates to how you deal with people, and trauma in the landscape as well can mirror how you're feeling. We can often find that we've got particular trauma. We're actually attracted to live in certain areas because it almost acts as a catalyst for us to deal with it. I've seen many people drawn to houses with particularly difficult underground water that's behaving in ways that negatively impacts us, and that acts as a trigger point for their trauma as well. So it forces them to confront it. Like attracts like, you know, and as I say, if the universe is evolving, we're all expressions of the universal consciousness evolving, then we have to evolve along with it. And to evolve, you have to be put to the test. You have to find your fear and you have to work beyond it. And the only way of testing the limits of what is possible is to step beyond those limits, as Arthur C. Clarke said. Do I believe that negative energies can attach to horses? It depends what you mean by negative energies. I firmly believe that horses can attract negative energies to them. It depends what you mean by entities. I'm aware that some people will think about disincarnate souls and things like that. I have seen horses take on negative energy associated with people who have a lot to do with them, the same as dogs will often take on illness. But I've not seen them pick up things the way that humans do, no. But they are very aware of things within the landscape that might be of human trauma making, if you're right. So horses struggle, I've seen many horses struggle around plague pits, where known sites of plague pits or battle grounds, or sites of, sort of like mass slaughter, things like that. Horses struggle, they do pick up things in that area, and it can make them behave more in a defensive survival mode than they would ordinarily. So, but we've all been to places that just don't feel right, haven't we? That feel creepy, for want of a better word, regardless of what's in the landscape. Places that make us feel like, oh God, I don't want to be in here. And horses very much pick up on that too. But so do dogs, so do cats. It depends on your mindset, I would say, on how you perceive or what you mean by negative energies. Yeah, do private message me if you've got any queries, because some of the things are a bit personal to discuss, and it depends on your mindset. I mean, there are people who talk to me about, they're disincarnate souls, and then I think, well, are they, or is it a time mismatch? Are we just seeing through time? And time, I've seen things played out in landscapes like a tape recording, but it doesn't mean there's actually anything there. It's just like an imprint in the landscape. So there are all sorts of strange things that go on for people like me who can see energies. It can be an education looking round. I've seen horses pick up and mirror, particularly when they're being ridden. It's a really interesting thing when horses are being ridden, and horses' energies and the rider's energies that coincide. The horse, their heartbeat resonates. Our heartbeat starts to actually resonate with theirs. They have such a big heart. The vibrational frequency of the heart affects our heartbeat. So we start to resonate with the slow and calm beat of the horse. But it's not just the heart, interesting, that does that. Our energy field will often mirror the horse as well. And our chakras, I've noticed the patterns in a horse's chakra and the patterns in human chakras start to mirror each other. So you can have someone who's got a real lot of trauma sitting in certain chakras. As they ride, their chakra starts to take on the calmness and the clearness of the horse. And it's as if it dissipates out of the person. It can come back again once they're not riding. But for the time that they are with their horse, they become clearer and they become calmer. And I think that's why when we're really, really traumatised, it's almost like the horse can't balance us out for that period. And that's when they become stressed. So it's a really, really interesting phenomenon to watch. It's a really interesting phenomenon to watch when you're watching professional jockeys, etc., or eventers or show jumpers. How in sync some pairs really are, and how slightly out of sync some are. So you can look at some horses and think, God, they and that jockey are absolutely a one being at the moment. And other ones you think, they're not going to be successful because they're not together. The jockey's got his own mind on, it might be his career, or he's riding, but he's not focused on the job the same as the horses, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's a really, really interesting thing to watch when you can see energies. It's like, who's really in sync and who's working in complete partnership, or who is trying to be dominant, and it's normally the person, as I say, not the horse. The horse is just normally trying to do what it wants to do, and if it enjoys doing the work, that is also very prevalent in its energy fields. If it enjoys racing, or if it enjoys jumping, if it enjoys inventing, and it feels well cared for and looked after, it is a different energy around that horse than the one that is just being pushed to do it against its will. And a lot of top people don't want to do that. It's just certain aspects of, obviously, equine performance businesses are not quite... Well, it is what it is, and there are scales of how people deal with things. So, if you've got any questions about tonight's live, if you want to put them up afterwards on reflection, that's fine. But I think that's about it for this evening, because, I've got an appointment in a few minutes. So I hope you've all found it useful. And entertaining and a little bit educational. And if you, as I say, if you've got any queries, put them on, and I will see you again next week, same time, 7:30 on Thursday evening. And if you've got any subjects that you want me to talk about, or you've got any queries in the meantime, anything that would make a good idea, if you're a horse owner that you think would be other horse owners would like to listen to, because although obviously I work with horses, I come from a geomantic point of view. Oops, keep knocking my camera. A geomancy point of view, but it's more to do with, obviously, with if you own horses, how can it help my horse? How can it help my relationship or my health or the well-being of animals? So do put your questions up. That would be great. And I will see you same time next week on Thursday evening. Thanks very much then, everyone who's joined us. Okay, bye.